step in as the agency. Oh, that's true. Got it. Agency updates. So a couple things is probably some of you've heard. I thought I'd go over a little bit on the budget for the state, which we'll hear more about obviously in the future. Moving forward, it looks like the state budget, we're going to look at, again, deficits as we did last year experience. We have a lot of funding, obviously, that's already in play from the previous year's investments. And so we're good there, at least for now. We have about $853 million out between the 4 labor agency entities. A good portion of that is through the California Workforce Board. And so we have a lot of money in play, a lot of people in training, and we're tracking those outcomes as our teams are doing. I would say the other update I have would be on California Jobs First, which was announced at the Cal Ford event 2 weeks ago. I'm looking at Derek, I think 2 weeks ago. And so that is kind of the umbrella rebrand of what we used to call a Community Economic Resilience Fund, SURF funding. And so the governor really wanted to brand the name in a way that the general population understands what the intent of SURF and all of our programs are, which is California Jobs First. So I think that's an exciting move. Obviously, we have 4 different workforce development programs under the labor agency, and also working in coordination with the Chancellor's office. As many of you probably saw, the executive order on Freedom to Succeed executive order, which was signed. Joe and I had the pleasure of being with the governor about a month and a half ago now, I think, if I get all my timing right, which was really looking at career pathways and better alignment around how we can do the work with our community colleges, our K-12 system, and our UCs and state universities. And so we have deadlines now around legislation to look at for the governor by December 1st. Any budget requests that we will have, in addition, although realizing the budget's going to be a little tight again this year, and looking at how we align funds under the Career Pathways Initiative. So I think that as we move forward, more information will come out around that work. It's important because we have a lot of money within the apprenticeship training programs in play through a lot of our joint apprenticeship training councils and working with our labor friends and family around how do we move people into good path jobs. And so really thinking about how do we work with our community college systems and our K-12 system to streamline some of that work. We know that there's some challenges in the past, but there's a lot of amazing work that takes place out there in the field. But how do we make that more system-wide versus it being a lot of really great projects here and there? And so I think for this next year, we will be looking at ways to build out the career pathways work and looking at other states, looking at other countries as we have in the past to see what opportunities California has to lead under this. We're in terms of the goal towards the 500,000 as the governor put in 2029 for the apprentices. We're actually making pretty good strides. We're at 157,000, I think, which typically, if you remember, we always hovered around 93 to 95,000 apprentices per year in training. And so we're up to about 153,000. Based on where we sit today, we will hit the target of 500,000 by 2029. Minus any major recessions, obviously, because that always has an effect on our training programs in one way or another. So with that, I think generally, we've got funding that we've deployed, the Workforce Board primarily around the healthcare initiatives. Matter of fact, as you probably saw, which if I get an update, we've held up a little bit of the funding just because there was so much request. I think Joel said it was about 100, or Sandra, you can remind me, 117 million in requests, but we only had, I think, $43 million available and going out. And then we have next year funding in healthcare of an additional $43 million.
Are we sharing that with our governor and legislature also?
Yeah, right, exactly. So the good news is we have a lot of funding out there, a lot of training is taking place, a lot of work is being done within the areas. And so look forward to any questions if anybody has any.
Does anyone have any questions or comments to Secretary Knox's report?
What so on the community colleges and K through 12 programs, I'm a big supporter of that and wonder kind of what's been done so far. And then do you have ideas of the direction that you're going in, or still doing research on that, it sounds like?
Still doing research, but one of the components that we know we could do better at is credit for prior learning, which you've probably heard CPL, and competency-based education, which is kind of our side of the house system for which but we don't have ways to match that up with the community college systems and K-12 as well. So how do we do that in a way that people actually are obtaining stackable credentials and certifications? So we know the path for which we need to get there is going to be the complicated part in terms of what laws are actually maybe restraining us from doing so, or what new laws potentially could be involved to actually make that workable. And so I think those are some pieces in play. The chancellor, the new chancellor, is really amazing and has done work locally. She was the current community college district chancellor, and she's Sonia Christian, Dr. Christian. And so working with her and her team of really thinking what trailer bills potentially we could actually do to actually do some cleanup. In terms of cost wise, I think, the governor, as you know, and the legislature, thank you, has put a lot of money into the system and workforce development training. So I think it's really less about the money. It's about transitioning the way we think about that world. Exactly. I mean, as you know, that 1.9 million students are in the community college system. We train about 150,000 now in apprenticeship training programs. But how do we make sure that those folks in those apprenticeship training programs have laterals between the two systems potentially? And also what are our K-12, I know the Riverside area and San Bernardino area does a lot of great work around career pathways in the high school level. How do we start to build that out throughout the state of California? Working with Department of Rehab and Joe's folks in terms of which we have a great working relationship with them of how do we actually have people with disabilities that are able to move into these programs. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I think we know the path that we're trying to get to. It's just now we got to figure out all of the parameters.
Okay.
Yeah. So I look forward to working with the legislature and making this happen.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there any other comments or questions for Secretary Knox? Okay. So now that we have a quorum, we're actually going to go back to the action portion of the agenda. So we can entertain a motion for approval of January 21st, 2023 meeting summary. This can be found on page 4 of your agenda packet.
I will see this. I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by Neil.
Second.
Second by Joe. Sorry. And all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Do we have any abstentions or nays? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we can consider a motion for approving recommendations for local and regional plans.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and the board. My name is Ashley Engelstein. I'll be presenting to you the local and regional planning. Starting with a little bit of background, the CWDB published a directive in October of 2022, which provided guidance to the field on both federal and state requirements for regional and local plans. The intent of this guidance was to assist them in developing a seamless blueprint for the operationalization and implementation of all the required plan content. Local and regional plans do have to reflect our state plan as well. We did receive 3 public comments on the draft directive, and the public comments were addressed in the final published directive on October 27th of 2022. So upon board approval, local and regional planning modifications will be effective from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2025. Both of those lists are located in your packets. Local planning modification approvals. The following local planning modifications have been evaluated and met the requirements as identified and are now put in front of the board for final approval. There are a few local boards that are missing, and we are working with those local boards directly and their regional advisors to help them meet the requirements so that they can be recommended to you for approval at a subsequent meeting. Local plans are evaluated against criteria specified in the directive. This included WIOA core required partner coordination, strategic planning, state strategic partner coordination, and WIOA Title I coordination. Local plans are also had to specify stakeholder and community engagement activities and public comments. Do we want to do both local board? Do we want to pause and vote on local board?
Well, first, a couple of things. One is the public comments you mentioned, they were part of your process of putting these plans together, not specifically to speak on this agenda item. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, but we do have public comment.
Received an
So,
email about this.
Emily, please take it away.
Absolutely. So Grace Leakey of the Capital Morning Report just had a question clarifying, is the city of Orange or Orange County being placed on conditional approval as a local workforce development area?
Yes, they are not listed as a full approved board at the moment.
Okay.
Okay. That concludes public input.
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions related to the local and regional? Are we doing both of them together?
This was just the local plans,
Okay.
and then we can do the.
Thanks. And thanks for all the, hi, everybody. And thanks for all the work that everybody did on the plans. I know that we work with a number of local workforce boards and they're pretty hard to get done. And they're a lot more complicated than they were a few years ago, which is a good thing, I think. But I did have a question. You know, for a few years, we've been trying to encourage more regionalization, you know, more workforce boards working together. From the employer's point of view, you know, we don't always go by boundaries of a city or boundaries of a county. And so the regionalization of the workforce boards is really important. And I just wondered if we're moving forward on that. I see 8 or 9 regional workforce plans. Is there work in progress to continue to regionalize the workforce boards so more cooperation can be done between the local boards?
Staff has an answer. I don't know if staff has an answer to that. I'll step in a little bit, Bob. Thanks for the question. Yes, we still have the regional approach of the boards. And so there's funding that's still designed to do the regional work. I know that there's been complications around the way that once we fund a regional board, sometimes to get to the sub regional boards, the funding. And so we're working out some of those challenges, but yes, we're still moving in the regional board approach.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments or questions? So we can entertain a motion regarding the local plans approval.
Move approval.
Jamil motions to approve.
Seconded.
Second, Assemblymember Schiavo. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any abstentions or nays? Okay, let's proceed. The motion carries. Let's proceed to the regional plans. Ashley?
Thank you. So the following regional planning modifications have been evaluated and met the requirements as identified in the directive and are now put in front of the board for final approval. There are a few regional plans missing from the list, and we're working with those regional planning units and the regional advisors directly to help them meet the requirements so that they can be recommended to you for approval at subsequent meetings. Regional plans were evaluated against criteria specified in the directive. This included an analytical overview of the region and how the RPUs are fostering demand-driven skills attainment, enabling upward mobility for all Californians, aligning, coordinating, and integrating programs and services, and regional plans also had to specify stakeholder and community engagement activities. And then those are listed in your packet. And that is ready for a vote.
Perfect. Thank you, Ashley. Do we have any?
No public.
Okay. Do we have any comments or questions from the board? Okay, we can entertain a motion. So moved. A motion by Joe. Your second, Jamil. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Do we have any abstentions or nays? Okay, motion carries unanimously, and this takes us to the consideration of approving recommendations for local area subsequent designation and local board recertification. Ashley, you can lead us out.
Thank you. Yes. So the CWDB and the EDD published Workforce Services Directive 22-14 dated May 2nd of 2023, which contained the required criteria, associated definitions, and the application to request subsequent designation as a local area and recertification as a local board. For this directive, we received 5 public comments during the draft, and the public comments were then addressed in the final published directive on May 2nd, 2023. Upon board approval, local area subsequent designation and local board recertification will be effective from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2025. There are 5 criteria that local boards must meet in order to be recertified: local board membership, perform successfully, sustained fiscal integrity, engaged in regional planning, and local area assurances. In your packet, the following local boards have been evaluated and met the requirements as identified and are now put in front of the board for final approval. There are several local boards missing from this list, and we are working with those local boards and their regional advisors directly to help them meet the requirements so that they can be recommended to you for approval at a subsequent meeting.
Thank you, Ashley. Emily, first, do we have any public input?
No.
Okay, Councilmember Shalva.
Just, I noticed LA is conditionally approved on every one of these. Is there something going on there?
Ashley, can you speak?
Is that for me to answer?
Yeah.
They have not met the requirements as of now, so we're just working with them directly to ensure that they do. I know that there was, I think, some changes to the local board, so they're working really hard to get everything on track, and we're helping them do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shalva. Any other comments or questions from the board? We can entertain a motion.
So moved.
Councilmember Shalva moves, second by Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or nays? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. We go back now to our updates and discussion, and we'll turn it over to Emily for budget update.
Thank you. All right, so the state budget for this fiscal year was enacted July 1. And in our budget this year, we have 130.4 million in local assistance grants. Of this amount, we had 45 million for our high road training partnerships, health and human services, 5 million for our Breaking Barriers to Employment program, and we got 5 million for a new program called Healthy Economies Adapting to Last. The acronym on that is HEAL. And it has to do with the closure of ICE detention centers and retraining workers in that area. We had a new allocation of $15 million from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which will go towards our HRTP Low Carbon Economy Grant Program. We also received an allocation via a piece of legislation, Senate Bill 150, allocates us $50 million from the Department of Transportation, Caltrans, for our high road construction careers program. We're currently working with Caltrans on building out a scope of work for an interagency agreement to receive the funds. And once we receive the funds, we will then distribute those to the HRCC regions. This fiscal year, we also have received a few federal grant awards. Those include our work around reentry programs. The acronym on this is PROUD. It's Partners in Reentry for Workforce Development. And it's part of the First Step Initiative grant from the federal government. It's a partnership between the Bureau of Prisons and the Department of Labor. Our first round of funding, we got 5.3 million until 2026. And this is to scale a reentry program for MC3 training at Terminal Island in LA. We also were just awarded in September another expansion grant related to this. So that is $4 million to expand the programming that we pilot at Terminal Island to Northern California prisons. And we're currently working to identify 1 or 2 prisons we could possibly scale that to, looking at possibly a women's prison in Northern California. And then our third federal grant is the Building Pathways to Infrastructure grant. And this is for expansion of HRTP and transportation in California, and working also with a city in Oregon to consult with them. We are working with the Amalgamated Transit Union, and they will be the primary recipient of the subgrant on this to run the program for us, which goes until 2028. And that was $5 million. I'm sorry, I don't know if I mentioned that. Any questions?
Thank you, Emily. We don't have any comments or questions right now from the board. And we don't have any public input on this, right?
No public comment.
Okay, we'll proceed to our legislative update. Ashley?
Thank you. So to provide an overview of the legislative session, we had a total of 56 bills that we tracked. 9 of those bills are now 2-year bills. So we believe that we will see them again in January. We did have 2 bills that were signed, AB 3 by Assembly Members Burr and AB 1373 by E. Garcia. Both of those bills only require CWDB to provide a consultative, to be a consultative role. Are there any questions?
We don't have any comments or questions at this time. Thank you. So you can proceed with our state plan update.
Sure. So to kick off the state plan, the CWDB policy unit organized and facilitated a series of over 20 individual meetings, including with our WIOA title partners and our other state planning partners. These meetings included going over timelines, reviewing the criteria, and reviewing the entire current plan. We are currently finalizing the draft of our sections of the plan, and that will be sent to our executive team for review. The plan will be posted to the full plan with our title partner sections will be posted to our website for 30 days public comment period, no later than January 5th. We will also be announcing our public comment through a formal information notice and informally through email blasts and social media posts. The CWDB is the official submitter of the unified plan, and the projected date for the submission is March 8th. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ashley. We
Thank you.
don't have any questions at this time. Emily, we don't have any public input on this.
No public comment.
Okay, so we're gonna proceed to our open meetings update. The Council for California Workforce Development Board, Brooke, is she on right now?
I am.
Perfect.
Good morning, Chairperson, members of the board, and members of the public. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. My name is Brooke Barnum Roberts, and I am the CWDB's attorney. I will be sharing with you an update about changes to the Open Meeting Act law that applies to this board starting in January 2024. So I'm going to share my screen here. I've done a little presentation to walk us through the changes. Can everyone see this all right?
Yes, we can see it.
Wonderful. So the SB 544 changed the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, and these changes will be effective starting in the new year. This bill was signed by the governor just last month in September, and the changes it will make basically allow state board meetings to continue to be held by teleconference under certain specific conditions. The first condition is if a majority of members attend at the same teleconference location. And teleconference location is defined as a notice location open to the public. Then the locations of other remote attendee members do not have to be noticed, nor do those locations need to be open to the public. However, if a majority of members will not be at the same notice location open to the public, then any other locations need to be noticed and open to the public. And there is a, sorry.
Super easy for a 47-member board.
Yeah. As you can imagine, these changes are easier to meet for smaller boards. For our board, it's going to be more challenging. So we'll get to that at the end. But I did want to note that if there are members that have communicated to CWDB a need to attend remotely related to a disability, those members would be counted as physically present when we're tallying the majority. So what's the practical effect? Well, if a majority of board members are not attending the in-person meetings that we currently hold in Sacramento, we might consider setting up regional teleconference locations that will be noticed and open to the public. And we can look at those locations based on where our board members are located. So for instance, we might want to set up one regional teleconference location in Sacramento, one in the Bay Area, and one in the Los Angeles area. That's definitely an option. And we can use other state facilities that are proper in doing so. And a second option would be to have traveling meetings, which I understand we have done in the past, having the meetings travel to a new region each quarter. So, that everyone, that the same board members aren't inconvenienced each time, right? We kind of share the responsibility and the burdens here. I do want to note a few more additional changes before I open this to comment or questions. This law requires that board members have their cameras on if we do have remote members. Now, if there's a technical difficulty barring this, it must be announced. So, just because there's a technical difficulty, it doesn't mean that the meeting has to stop. But the default should be that the cameras are on if it's a Zoom type meeting or a video audio type meeting. There is a requirement that remote board member attendees announce whether anyone over the age of 18 is in the room and the nature of their relationship with those people. There's a requirement that votes be taken by roll call. And then there are other specific requirements about the public's ability to participate in the meetings remotely. And that's something I'm working through with the communications unit at CWDB to make sure we comply with. And finally, there's a requirement that the meeting must be ended or adjourned if the above requirements aren't met. And that ends my presentation. I'd like to open the floor to questions or comments on how we should proceed, in light of these changes.
Is this the last meeting for the year?
I think we have one in December.
Oh, sorry.
We have one in December.
Yeah. Any comments or questions for Brooke? Okay, Brooke, thank you. That was very straightforward. Definitely things that we need to plan for. We have time until January, but Bob, you have a comment or question?
Sorry, I couldn't get my hand up fast enough. Anyway, in terms of the notice, will the notice on the California Workforce Development Board website and the notice of the meeting of where those local meetings are, will that be enough advertising to go by the law?
Yeah, I mean, we'll make sure that we comply with the notice provisions. The notice provisions in the Open Meeting Act haven't changed significantly. Yeah, but just making sure agendas are posted ahead of time, notices posted on the website. And then if there are other locations, notice would need to be posted outside of those locations as well. So all of the standard rules still apply. And I do want to address one question that came up with the executive committee. There was a question as to whether we could perhaps use members' homes as satellite locations. And I did do some more research into that. and determined that because the ADA has very strict requirements on, what the facilities need to be like to accommodate those that have special needs, it'd be very difficult to do that, I think.
Okay, well, Brooke, Emily?
I just had, I wanted a brief survey of the board members. Do you all have a preference for multiple regional locations or a traveling?
My sense is this is something we should do via email,
Okay.
just so people have time to think about it and they can respond and we can count things easier and so forth. So, but
Okay.
if staff can please facilitate that, we'd really appreciate that.
We will. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. So thank you, Brooke, for that. And for everyone, please stay tuned and we'll be preparing for those efforts. Our next portion of our agenda is a tradition we have for every meeting where we try to stay on the pulse for our state board members at the local level, our local workforce leaders. Jan Vogel, who's a very long time workforce leader from South Bay Workforce Development Board, will be presenting with us his efforts over there.
Okay,
John.
well,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and board members and public. I'm very happy to do a little presentation for you, and it's always a pleasure to be able to speak directly to the board. I also have Michael Trogan on my staff that's going to help me with this and help with this presentation. So I think we have a PowerPoint.
Yep.
Michael, you putting that up or? Okay.
Hold on.
So, the whole purpose of what we do is really to try to find meaningful partnerships and collaboration. That's what boards do. That's what boards do throughout the state. And that's what we do. Next page, Michael. The South Bay Workforce Investment Board, as most of you know, is one of 7 boards in the LA region. And presently we operate over 60 grant programs, which includes WIOA, but many grants that are not WIOA. South Bay Workforce area is 11 cities in the South Bay of the LA region. 2022-23 fiscal year, we had a budget of over $62 million. That doesn't mean we expended $62 million because we expend almost all the money on WIOA funds, but on other grants, we wouldn't expend all of that money. So we probably have expenditures closer to half. And most of the money that we receive, the vast majority of those funds are passed through to other organizations, other boards, other organizations, particularly schools and participants. Some grants, 93 or 95% of those monies are passed through. Overall, I would say it's closer to about 80% if we include all the grants. We reached that particular year about 117,000, almost 118,000 visits to our 4 workforce centers in the South Bay area. And again, it's still impacted by the pandemic. It's coming back very strong right now, but last year it was still affected, and some of our grants were greatly affected by it, but still a lot of individual contacts from our residents. We do operate as a nonprofit, which allows us flexibility to secure funds to go well beyond our service area throughout California and the nation to do certain things so that we could have many partners throughout the state. And it's been very beneficial to us. Next page, Michael. Current funding landscape challenges. Of course, government budgets and priorities are constantly changing, so we always have to change our priorities. There's a proliferation of organizations vying for workforce dollars. So funders are seeing 4 to 5 times the number of applications as to prior to the pandemic. So what that has made us do really or concentrate on is push towards funding through tentpole organizations. So we try to get organizations that are viable organizations that can provide services for particular grants under 1/10, so to speak. So it's not, certainly not just us. It's our friends and partners that do a great job. And we're not looking for simply service providers. We're looking for organizations that can actually provide services that we are asking them to provide, but also to leverage additional services because of the organizations that they are. And this is how we have to do it in order to remain relevant. We always prioritize targeted populations. And funders require applications to contain significant partnership and leverage resources. And that's what we've been doing for many, many years and continue to do, and do more of it now than ever before. Keys to creating meaningful partnerships, long-term relationships. You know, as everybody on this board knows, the way to be successful is through relationships. If you don't have the relationships, you're not going to get anywhere. And luckily, we have lots of long-term relationships. Give you an example. For example, one of the things that I really enjoy being a part of is our youth council, which is a subcommittee of our board. And on our youth council, we have in our area 11 different school districts. Well, all of those school districts are on the youth council, including several community colleges and our state college. But it's really gratifying for this, for me, to see all of these school districts participate on our youth council. And many of the superintendents actually show up to those meetings. And they converse with one another and get good ideas from one another. And because of that youth council, and because of the relationship, because of what happens, the South Bay Workforce Investment Board has benefited from that greatly, in that we have contracts with individual school districts to provide workforce services. So the strong workforce monies that they get, a lot of those districts, instead of reinventing the wheel, look to us to be able to provide those services, and we do. So we have a great relationship with our local schools, and it's in great part because of the youth council and how we utilize that. Leveraging existing funds and the flexibility of partnerships and the intermediaries that we are in workforce boards. Michael Trogan, my special
I can jump in.
manager. Why don't you chime in on those?
Sure. And you know, Jan just gave a great example of it. Is you know, we're building partnerships where everybody has a skin in the game. You know, our school districts are writing us into strong workforce grants to fund us. We're then leveraging our WIOA and our county money. And so, you know, when everybody comes to the table with resources, it builds a true partnership versus that, you know, that contractor subcontractor relationship where I'm paying you to do a service. We're talking about real partnership. Again, everybody is committing resources to the project. And then the next one on there is being flexible in the roles. You know, workforce boards we're well established. We have processes, procedures, departments, staff. We can do a lot of these A to Z roles on these projects, but a lot of times you go into partnerships and they already have a lot of that puzzle established. And we don't want to just come in and say, well, we're going to do this because this is what a workforce board does. We look at the partnership and what do they need? What role do you want us to play? And we'll give some examples of kind of how that looks in the real world. And then the final part of that is intermediaries and capacity builders. It's more than just accomplishing the program, the project, getting the numbers, the enrollment, and the outcomes. We also approach our partnerships to build the capacity of these community organizations. You know, a lot of times private funding, other funders aren't as strict requiring the documentation paperwork that a state, federal, you know, government grants do. So we take the opportunity to actually teach and grow every partner that we work with so that then they can in turn apply for grants and write us in, just like the schools. Again, another perfect example of, you know, we build up the capacity of them beyond just to do that program, but to actually work with them so that they can pursue funding as well. And then ideally more funding comes into our region, comes into us, comes into everybody wins. So we'll give a couple of real world examples of projects where we kind of went through this and jump in there. The first one is, this is actually a grant funded through the California Workforce Board. It's one of your high road training partnership things. The lead applicant is an organization called the Brick Foundation, and they are the head of a big collaborative of about 50, 60 employers, community organizations, training providers, unions, huge collaborative. We helped them, supported their application. They got a $3.5 million grant. But where this comes in is, a lot of the traditional career roles that workforce boards play, such as job development, case management, employer engagement, they already had that in place. That wasn't what they needed. So, instead of us coming in and saying, well, these are the roles we traditionally play, we want to do that, we switched gears, and we actually are now working with them in a much more administrative. So we're helping them with procurement and subcontracting, teaching them how to do invoices, making sure that the documentation on an invoice that's sent up to the workforce board is acceptable. So we talk about that capacity building and training. We're also working heavily on the data collection, getting that information that the state board requires, even something as simple as verifying the eligibility of a participant to be in the program. A lot of small organizations don't do that because they got private funding. It's not required. So teaching them, collecting them. So this was a really different role than we traditionally play. And it was because we met with those partners, talking about what they needed and said, well, we can fill in here. And we stepped in a different area. And I'll turn it back over to Jan for another large project where we filled a different role.
Yeah, the other example, and another example would be the partnership we have with West Los Angeles College. And we were lucky enough to be able to be the recipient, or West LA College was, where with our assistance, to receive a $12 million grant from the Federal Department of Labor. And the goal is to serve 5,000 new enrollees, but 5,000 new apprenticeships, really, and enrollees in the advanced manufacturing and manufacturing sector. And I'm happy to say that this grant should end June 30th of 2024. I think we already have close to 4,300 new apprentices that have been enrolled in this grant. So we're very happy to have been a part of that, and it's going very well. And the manufacturing sector is growing because of it. Another outgrowth of what we've been able to do with West LA College has been help form the Southern California Apprenticeship Network. And Irvine Foundation provided us with a grant on that, is to try to get as many businesses that haven't participated in starting apprenticeship programs to start apprenticeship programs. And we have at the moment well over 300 businesses that are interested, put in interest cards that they want to participate in possibly joining the apprenticeship network and becoming a viable member and starting an apprenticeship program. Another organization that we're proud to be a partner of, and again, it all stems from the original apprenticeship programs that we've done, and that's NASA. And NASA has come out to our office and talked to us and some of the local businesses that they're involved in, and talking about all their needs in the next 5 years, how many people are going to have to be hired because of NASA grants, and developing new skills for individuals to become working in the aerospace industry. And these aren't necessarily individuals that have to be college graduates. These are skills that can be provided through apprenticeship programs, through the high schools, through the community colleges. And I believe there's 3 hubs throughout the nation on that. And we are one of the hubs in this region and Orange County and close by regions. So we're heading up that hub for NASA. Well, we have another example on this page. Talking about apprenticeship programs, we started the Construction and Utilities Pathway Program we call CUP several years ago. And the impetus for starting up that program was all the construction going on in our area. SoFi Stadium was going to be built. Now we are building Intuit Stadium where the Clippers are going to be built. So there's a lot of construction going on. And because of that, we formed this pathway to get individuals hired into those construction jobs. Several thousand new apprentices were hired in the building and trades as a result of the CUP program. And those numbers are increasing all the time. One of the interesting aspects of that CUP program is we were able to enroll into these apprenticeship programs and into construction, the building and trades, many African American males, which traditionally has not been a successful target group that the building and trades were able to enroll. We were able to enroll a very high percentage of African American males. The Federal Highway Administration heard about this, and the Federal Highway Administration, which had a very, very poor record of enrolling African American target group into their apprentice programs and into their federal highway contracts, designated our CUP program and LAX as pilot projects. The SoFi Stadium and LAX as pilot programs for the Federal Highway Administration, and they became two of the most successful programs that the Federal Highway Administration ever had because of our local CUP program. And that program continues, and we continue to do regular recruitments in our local jurisdictions that are having increased construction. Example number 4 is a prison to employment program. Prison to employment program, I'm going to have Michael say a few words on it, but as many of you may know, in the last prison to employment program, over 40%, if I'm pretty sure about this, over 40% of the unsubsidized placements that resulted from the prison to employment program throughout the state came from the LA region. And we were the regional coordinator for the LA region for the prison to employment program. Michael, you want to say a few words about this one?
Yeah, the organizations serving justice involved individuals, they're kind of in that same model of they're used to doing everything A to Z with the formerly incarcerated participants. They're trying to do everything. And so when we started talking about what roles people can play, when we designed the original P2E program, we started meeting with our local community providers and realizing they don't need to reinvent the wheel with things like job placement and vocational training. Let's design a system where we partner together, and again, everybody plays their role on that A to Z spectrum, because it was so ingrained for so many years. It was just these CBOs doing the work, hands-on, grassroots. And so when we came there, we decided everybody will do their part, design this program, this continuum of what roles we're going to play, what roles were needed. As a result of that, as Jan said, the prison deployment, it was wildly successful. Our goal was 705 enrollments under that. We had over 1,800 individuals enrolled in that program last round. And then it goes beyond that, because now that model that we created where everyone's doing their part, the roles, instead of, recreating services that other people are already doing, let's all kind of fit our niche and our need for the population. We're now being written in. We've written in county level grants. There have been federal grants that have been employed. We're taking this model beyond just the workforce board prison to employment funding, and are now, let's put this model to every grant, and let's work together as collaboratives and partnerships in the LA region, which traditionally, again, everybody's competing for the money. Didn't happen. We did this model where everybody wins, where everybody's moving forward. The hire initiative that was just released under the workforce board. Again, this model, you'll probably see people that grade those will see this model in multiple applications because we're all working on it together. And then again, we're now in the second round of prison to employment. So again, it was that collaborative building of the partnership, everybody does their roles to serve people A to Z instead of all of us thinking we have to do everything internally. We really, as a system, built that partnership up.
2 other quick examples. Example number 5 would be our iTrain eligible training provider list. You have a state list of eligible training providers, ETP, and it's formulated based upon local lists that feed up to the state list and become individual organizations that can provide training. What we found out early on, many years ago is that if for every area to have a list is counterproductive, because the private training providers will go to the local list that pays them the most money and say, take us off your other lists. It didn't work. So what we did, again, decades ago, is say, we're willing to be the intermediary for this and to solicit these schools to go through the provider, the procurement, to make sure we have the best schools at the best price. And we send industry experts out to the schools to evaluate the school prior to contracting with them. We look at the private schools' financial statement to make sure that they will be sustainable, financially sustainable. And we look at their placement rate and verify the placement rate prior to getting on our list. And we do this for almost all the boards in the LA region and the Orange County region. And we're available to do it for other regions as well. And as more and more requirements come down from the feds and the state, as far as regional coordinators for ETPL, it becomes very cumbersome for local boards. So we being able to pick up the slack and do that for them is a tremendous help. Plus the fact we can help enter the information into CalJobs for the community colleges, and it's a very good service for them. Another example, example number 6, the last example, is that we're the gain intermediary for all of LA County. So the individuals that are on public assistance getting services and wishing to get into the workforce, individuals on TANF, for example, that are single head of household parents, enter the Transitional Subsidized Employment Program. We're the employer of record on that. And the reason why we were able to do that successfully is that we in turn contract with all the other boards' work source centers. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We use the existing systems. So those workforce centers contract with us, and we do the contracting for all the work sites throughout the county. We are responsible for all the payroll, and we're the employer of record for all the participants in those programs. So it takes a lot of the burden off the individual work source centers and the other individual boards, and they're able to do what they're best able to do. If they had to do all of it, they would drop out very quickly, because you never know how many referrals we're going to get. So we do that, and we've been doing it for decades. Those are some examples of partnerships that we have. And you know, there are a lot of boards in California, and you have a lot of terrific boards in California, and many of them are just doing wonderful things. So thank you for the opportunity to address you today, and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Jan. We really appreciate not just your fantastic report and all the great work that all of your team is doing out in the South Bay, but just you've been a very strong tenured workforce leader throughout the state, and we value that. So I'm happy to open it up for any comments or questions for Jan. Assemblymember Chavo.
I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about what you were talking about the youth council. And I'm curious what you hear or learn. I assume there are youth on the youth council in addition from administrators from the school boards. What you're hearing from youth in terms of what their needs are around jobs and training. And also just on the apprenticeship network that you talked about. I heard you talk about partnering with businesses. I wondered if unions are a part. Are those union apprenticeship programs, or they're just strictly done by the businesses to train for their specific business?
Okay, I'll take questions one at a time. On the schools and the youth council, we do have several youth on the youth council, and they do participate. But frankly, the thing that is the most valuable is discussions that take place between the schools. And they always have, each superintendent, each school has an opportunity to talk for a couple of minutes about what's going on in their school. And And the other schools learn from that. I mean, we have one school in our area, local school, an economically disadvantaged area. They started with our help these small school academies. So they broke up the schools so that individual students can enroll in one of the small school academies. And recently we had an event inviting the public to visit and hear about these small school academies. And we had several hundred individuals from the community and businesses attend that event. Other school districts attended that event, and other school districts are taking that example of how to develop a small school academy, how to develop businesses to be part of that academy, and individuals from businesses to help them. When NASA was out here, I mentioned NASA before, I took them to the engineering academy at this local district, and they were blown away by the students there, just blown away. And they're so excited about maybe giving some of these young people a chance to be hired in the aerospace industry. So I would say that's I forgot the exact question. I don't know if I answered that question, but it's that's where they get the most bang for their bucks is the communication between them. And when they wish to develop certain new types of small school academies based upon the industry, they would include us, involve us in those discussions. And we are actually on site at these various academies and at the school districts so that the students can get information all the time on resume writing, how to get a job, and help them get a job. So we're working with them closely. As far as the Southern California Apprenticeship Network, it's open to any business. For business that are unionized are welcome, and we do have some businesses that don't have unions are welcome. It's neutral. It's labor neutral, and the idea is to develop as many new apprenticeship programs as we can, and to help our labor secretary achieve that goal of 500,000 new apprentices by that date that he had there. We're gonna make sure that that's achievable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamil.
I just had a comment. Jan, it's Jamil.
Hi, Jamil.
Hi, you're a legend in California workforce.
You mean
I've
I'm
known you
old?
for-
Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're trying to call me?
Hey, we're all old. My wife reminds me, she says, you're old when you have more doctors than you have friends. But Jan, I wanted to thank you for your leadership, and you have mentored many of the private sector workforce leaders in California. And I want to thank you for your tireless efforts for all of us. Thank you, my friend.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for those kind words, Jamil.
Thank you, Jamil. Floyd, did you want to have a comment or question?
Yes, I wanted to just echo those sentiments and say, specifically, I really impressed with your outcomes with African American men, and I just want to applaud that and say, how do you share best practices with other regions, and then how about the impact for our Latino brothers as well in that community?
Yeah, and the reason I was mentioning African American men is because that particular population was not did not have as many individuals involved in the construction trades as the Latino community, because they were well represented in that particular in building and trades. But we work very closely with the any underrepresented group. We have special relationships with the Department of Rehabilitation, and we have 2 programs where we're placing individuals that have special needs at LAX as ambassadors. So it's the special needs individuals, Latino population, African American population, women, of course, that are underrepresented in some industries, and it's outreach. And because we've been around and our centers are known in the community for so long, that they sort of gravitate towards our centers because they know who we're willing to help and able to help. And I think it's just a matter of relationships again, and being able to talk to the individuals who are in charge of the hiring. So I think that's really the key.
Thank you, Floyd. Thank you, Jan, for that. Any other comments or questions? Well, I just want to again echo and reinforce the sentiments from Jamil and everyone for all of you guys' great work. Thank you, Jan, and we'll look forward to continuing following your success. Thank you.
You're very
Presenting.
welcome. Thank you too for all your hard work. Bye.
Thank you. So this takes us to other business. I want to share that our longtime colleague of 11 years, Joseph Williams, he's decided to step down from our board. I just want to say, he's been a great advocate, especially I know for many of us, the one thing we always associate him with is his advocacy for youth. And that's a really important component of our workforce system. And he's been on the community colleges with the state. He's working in a school district now, Rialto, and then he's within the private sector. So he's done a lot of different things, and we appreciate his service to our state and our board. So I just want to acknowledge that. Our next full board meeting is December 13th at 10 a.m. Are there any other board member reports or updates that anyone wants to share before we?
General.
Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. Is there any other updates? Okay. So our last portion of our agenda is general public comments, and I'll turn it over to Emily.
All right, we do have one general public comment. Would you like to come up and read your comment?
Sure. You have 3 minutes. Welcome.
I appreciate you. Yeah, I just wanted to thank Emily. I reached out. I work with kids in the juvenile hall here in Sacramento, also in Yuba County. And my main reason for coming here, again, I emailed Emily's team. They were real gracious, invited me and let me know and gave me a visitor badge and everything. But anyways, I'm currently working under the governor's plan for violence reduction in the juvenile halls. And I use my story to kind of, connect with the youth and inspire them to get them to change their way of thinking, to do things differently, if you will. But at the end of that, I need to plug them into something, right? I can't just tell them, hey, change your life and not give them an opportunity. So my hope today was to connect with you guys to be able to provide those opportunities. I know, I think it was Secretary Knox, I believe, was mentioning a lot of different things. So I want to be able to, more than anything, connect with you guys and be able to share the opportunities to these youth as well. So I just wanted to thank you for all the work you're doing as well.
Thank you. Thank you for your efforts, and our staff will continue to be engaged and follow up with you. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Appreciate you, bud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public?
No other public comment.
Okay. So at this time, we can give you almost 2 hours back from our original scheduled time frame. We can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Jamil, motion, Joe, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or nays? All right. Thank you, Senator Cortez, for your sentiments. Welcome to your first meeting, and we will adjourn the meeting at 11:08 a.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.